While the world celebrates the AI revolution, something darker has been happening behind the scenes. The richest countries on Earth have been quietly conducting the largest talent heist in human history. Top engineers, researchers, and data scientists from India, Nigeria, Brazil, Egypt, and dozens of developing nations are being lured away with salaries 10 or 20 times what they could earn at home, leaving their countries without the human capital needed to build their own AI future. This isn't just old-fashioned brain drain. This is a new form of resource extraction for the 21st century, and depending on how the next few years play out, it could either lock in global inequality for generations, or, surprisingly, start reversing itself in ways almost nobody predicted a few years ago. The scale of this talent migration has been staggering. The United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Australia dramatically expanded immigration programs specifically targeting AI and tech talent. Companies like Google, OpenAI, Meta, and Microsoft have aggressively recruited straight out of top universities in developing countries, often with compensation packages far beyond anything available at home. India illustrates the pattern more starkly than any other country on Earth. It sends more AI researchers abroad than any nation in the world, and its AI professionals report some of the highest anxiety globally about losing their best people to emigration. This created a genuinely vicious cycle for developing nations. They invest heavily in education, often with limited public resources, only to watch their best and brightest leave for opportunities abroad, which then makes it even harder to build the domestic tech ecosystem needed to retain the next generation of talent. The economic impact of this is enormous. Developing countries lose not just the immediate productivity of departing workers, but the innovation, entrepreneurship, and tax revenue those workers could have generated at home. The countries receiving that talent gain a massive competitive advantage, widening the gap between rich and poor nations even further. Critics have called this modern economic colonialism, dressed up as merit-based immigration. The ethical questions here are genuinely difficult. On one hand, individuals absolutely have the right to seek better opportunities for themselves and their families. Nobody should be denied that. On the other hand, when an entire national education system effectively ends up subsidizing the talent needs of far wealthier countries, it raises real questions about fairness and global justice that don't have easy answers. And because AI is likely to be one of the most consequential technologies of this century, shaping economic growth, military power, and global influence, concentrating its talent in a handful of already wealthy nations concentrates that future power right along with it. But here's where this story takes a turn that most coverage of AI brain drain completely misses. According to a Boston Consulting Group tracker analyzing over 220 million skilled professionals worldwide, global cross-border migration of highly skilled workers actually fell by more than 11% in 2025 alone, with AI talent mobility specifically dropping 12%, largely because wealthy destination countries have been tightening visa and immigration policies, not loosening them. And in the middle of that slowdown, India didn't just avoid losing ground. It posted the largest single-year gain in global AI talent share of any country tracked, expanding its position in AI, STEM, and research talent all at once, partly fueled by skilled professionals actually returning home. A new EU-India mobility agreement signed in January 2026 is expected to accelerate that trend even further. None of this erases the brain drain problem. It's still real, and it still devastates countries with fewer resources than India's rapidly growing tech sector. But it does mean the old story of a simple one-way pipeline from poor countries to rich ones is already breaking down in some of the very countries most associated with it, replaced by something researchers now call brain circulation instead of brain drain. Interestingly, it's not just developing nations losing this fight. Even wealthy Europe is caught in its own version of the same trap. Europe actually produces about 30% more AI talent per capita than the United States, and nearly 3 times as much as China, thanks to strong universities and research traditions. And yet it experiences a substantial net outflow of its most senior AI professionals, mostly to the US, UK, and Gulf states, because Europe's research funding, computing infrastructure, and startup ecosystems still can't match what's on offer elsewhere. If a continent with Europe's resources and research pedigree can't fully solve this problem, it says something sobering about how difficult it will be for developing nations with far fewer resources to compete. So what are countries actually trying, and is any of it working? Developing nations are experimenting with better incentives to retain talent, competitive salaries, research funding, entrepreneurship support, and quality of life improvements. Some are finding real success. China has managed to raise its share of top-tier AI researchers from 29% to 47% of the global total in just a few years, through a mix of competitive compensation, patriotic appeal campaigns, and geopolitical tensions that have made emigrating to the US more complicated for Chinese researchers specifically. India has leaned into rapid domestic investment. Microsoft and Amazon alone have committed over $52 billion combined to AI infrastructure inside the country in the past year. On the receiving end, some researchers argue rich countries could adopt more ethical immigration policies, including compensation or knowledge-sharing arrangements with the countries that trained this talent in the first place, and international bodies have floated the idea of a UN-brokered global AI talent pact to make the competition less zero-sum. None of these fixes are close to solving the problem yet, but they represent the first real acknowledgement that the old brain drain playbook needs to change. The great AI talent heist remains one of the most important, underreported stories of our time, but it turns out to be a more complicated story than rich countries win, poor countries lose. It's a story about how global inequality is being maintained and reinforced in the digital age, and also, in a handful of countries, quietly being contested and reversed in real time. Understanding this dynamic matters for anyone who cares about fairness, development, and the future of global cooperation, because the decisions made or not made in the next few years will determine whether AI becomes a tool for shared prosperity or another mechanism for concentrating power and wealth in the hands of a few nations. What do you think? Can policies like India's actually be replicated by countries with far fewer resources, or is this advantage only available to a handful of large, fast-growing economies? Let me know in the comments, and if this gave you a clearer picture of what's really happening with global AI talent, subscribe, because this story is evolving faster than almost anyone expected.